Good afternoon and welcome to track 3. My name is Olli Junes and it's great to see full house. My performance anxiety will blow through the roof. And I would also like to thank our Czech colleagues for their great cooperation with also this session, and they also have an awesome mobile loading station on this floor, so I've used it all day long. You should too. You'll find it from their spot. The topic of this next session is important and very interesting. It's about something that is already here in our society, and it will surely change a lot of things during the next years and decades. The change will probably be even bigger as moving to the era of internet. I am, of course, talking about AI that is already changing our business and our craft. How does the future of AI and audio sound and look like, and what are the next possible steps in this area? We have two great experts of the topic speaking in this session. They will open this topic through interesting cases involving AI and audio. Vosalikova from Czech Radio and Satu Keto from Yle, Finnish Broadcasting Company. So, listen and learn from these great professionals. We are now traveling to the near future. Please welcome our first speaker, Vosalikova.
Right, so hello everybody. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. I'm here to present a use case for GPT. It's called the digital writer, as you can tell by the absolutely horrendous colored screen that you see. Before we get started, can I have a quick show of hands, just out of curiosity? How many of you have in some capacity already worked with artificial intelligence? Okay, so this will be a lot of fun. Fantastic. So I guess we can get started. I want to tell you a little bit about who the digital writer is. It's a project by Czech Radio that we started creating in 2020, so it's a fairly old one. I do have a small surprise for you towards the end of my presentation, so keep an eye out for that. But it basically utilizes GPT-2, GPT-3 autoregressive language models by OpenAI that I'm sure you're most comfortable with and most accustomed to when speaking about AI and autoregressive language models in general to create on-demand fiction audio content. So, first of all, the first thing I'd like to point your attention to is the mistake I made on the slide, which is that I numbered them wrongly, incorrectly. The first one is obviously the first series, the second is the second series. And the reason why I'm pointing this out, because I want to put your mind at ease that this presentation was indeed done by a human, so my very imperfect intelligence. So just keep that in mind. You're in safe hands here. This is a safe space. Thank you very much. I was hoping someone would do that. So the first, let's just get into it. Before we do, however, before I actually walk you through the two series and the two seasons of the digital writer, I want to tell you a little bit about autoregressive language models in general. We utilize, as I've mentioned, GPT-2 and GPT-3. They work like, if I were to put it simply, large neuron brains that create text through machine learning, I guess would be kind of a one-sentence summary that I personally use to explain it to my mother, who still has absolutely no idea what I do. So that's always, a good way to start a presentation. So I guess we can get started with the actual use cases. The first series of the digital writer was presented in 2020, and I do want to preface this by saying that Czech Radio utilizes artificial intelligence in a vast variety of technological solutions. Our online audio platform, Rozhlas, utilizes it in speaker, voice recognition, recommendation systems, voice synthesis, and all that jazz. But we did want to make sure to understand, and we were very curious what would happen if we were to give artificial intelligence just entire creative freedom. So that's what we did. We asked the artificial intelligence, in this case GPT-2 and GPT-3, to write 5 genre-based stories. We wanted the prompts to be based off of something, so we opted for genres. And the results were a sci-fi, a romance, a true crime, a horror story, and sort of a period piece. Now, in addition to these content, we also created an interview with AI experts that were there to address any kind of concerns people might have in terms of ethics, in terms of how the series was created. And we wanted to answer all of those questions and open up a wider conversation, which I think we did a fairly good job at, because it was scrutinized, this project, and we got a lot of feedback. Some of it was not good, but that's perfectly fine. When pioneering things, you need to expect to be slightly insulted, so that's always great. And how we did, you'll be able to tell in the next slide. There's a short story there that is the result of the first series of the Digital Writer. It's called The Boy and His Dog, and I'll present it in its entirety. It's about a two-minute piece. It's a horror story written entirely by GPT-2 and GPT-3, based on the prompt, write a horror story. Ooh, I think there's a slide in between that one. There's a couple. There we go. So you know what to look forward in the future. Before we get to the actual slide with the video, I do want to mention one thing. When marketing any type of content of this kind, something that is based off of a digital persona or digital writer, you will very often come across the fact that you don't have a face. And if you don't have a face, people will not click on it in terms of marketing. So we decided to utilize the faces of the actors that we asked to star in the separate stories. They're acclaimed actors that work with Czech Radio in some capacity, and they did a fantastic job, and we used their faces to give our digital writer and the first series an actual face. Now, let's talk a little bit about the process. As you can see, it's some very, very high-stakes stuff. The first thing we did was we generated a mass of text, then we picked 5 that we liked, and we made them. It is actually absolutely paramount to understand that these were generated in English, so we needed to translate them into Czech in order to be able to create the Czech versions for Czech Radio, of course. And we opted for a very sort of technical translation that would allow for the imperfections and the awkwardness and the just slight uncanny feeling of the text to really come through, and I think you'll be able to see it in a bit. We then recorded it with the actors that you saw on the slide previous, and we added some sound design. Now, for the first season, we opted for absolutely minimal sound design to make sure that the spoken word would be what we wanted to showcase and would be the most visible of everything that the project entails. So I think now is the slide with the actual short story.
Jednoho zimního večera jsem si vyslechl nejstrašidelnější příběh, jaký jsem kdy slyšel. Byl to příběh o chlapci, který měl psa. A ten pes byl jeho nejlepší přítel. A pak jednoho dne mu tatínek s maminkou oznámili, že se budou stěhovat. On ale nikam odjet nechtěl a tak se rozplakal. Řekli mu, že se pro něj vrátí, ale že nevědí, jak dlouho bude trvat, než se budou moct vrátit. Odjeli a chlapci se po nich moc stýskalo. Pes mu zatím umřel a hochovi bylo velice smutno. Když si pro něj konečně rodiče přijeli, nechtěl s nimi odjet. Prohlásil, že zůstane navždycky se svým psem. Rodiče zase odjeli a tentokrát už se pro něj nevrátili. Chlapec žil se svým mrtvým psem v pokojíku jednoho domu. Občas ho někdo navštívil a slyšel, jak ve vedlejší místnosti mluví se psem. Lidé se ho ptali, jestli mu něco není, ale chlapec odpověděl, že je v pořádku, protože ví, že si pro něj rodiče přijedou. Jednoho dne už lidem, kteří v onom domě bydleli, došla trpělivost. Nechtěli už neustále poslouchat, jak hoch mluví se svým psem, a tak vešli do jeho pokoje a zjistili, že je tam jen stařík s dlouhými rozcuchanými vlasy, který si sám pro sebe povídá o tom, že si pro něj jednou přijedou rodiče.
Digitální spisovatel.
Now, the funny thing about this is when we were generating scary stories, very often the generated stories would start with telling us how we should feel about them. This is the scariest story you're ever going to hear. Now, it didn't really work in most occasions, but with this one, it came pretty close. It's kind of harrowing. Now, quick question, is there anyone here that found that to be a little bit strange? A couple of you, yes, that's good, because we did too. So we decided to create the second season of the Digital Writer. I would have been really disappointed if you all thought it was normal, because that would mean we've done all of this for nothing. So that's good to know. Now, the second season of the Digital Writer was a far stretch from the first one. We decided to include real-life, renowned writers to collaborate with the artificial intelligence to create stories that were vastly more dramatic. They were obviously more well-written. They were just easier to listen to in the end, and we also kicked up the sound design a little bit more. Now, also part of this project, and I would argue that maybe one of the most valuable parts of the project, were interviews with the authors themselves, because we didn't want to speak for them. We didn't want to say, you know, everybody enjoyed the collaboration, it was fantastic, because it's fair to say not everybody did. A few of them really didn't like it. They thought it was gimmicky, they thought it was a hindrance to their creative processes, and they definitely let us know. So I think it was really a good idea, and it always is, when creating content like this, to really always give the feedback directly from the people that work with the artificial intelligence and engage with it, because that makes it all seem a lot more authentic. And people can enjoy the audio for what it is. A couple of short stories that are, you know, fun to listen to and have some fun plot twists, but it's also good to let them know exactly what they're getting themselves into when listening to content created or generated by AI. Now, for each and every one of the authors, and this is really the crux of this presentation and something that I find of great value, we created a separate model of interaction and collaboration that would best mimic how they themselves would use their creative processes and how they themselves would write. So let's go through them now. For Petr Stančík, who created a Greek myth called the Song of Nightmares, we opted for, and mainly he opted for, a collaborative model where he and the artificial intelligence were taking turns. Now, for the second season, we mainly used GPT-3. It was a resounding success for him, I would say, because we also created custom music. We opted for a somber male narrator, so the entire piece really has kind of a slow burn quality to it. And he enjoyed the collaboration quite a bit. He thought that the artificial intelligence had some very unique ideas that he himself as an author would not be able to come up with, or did take the story that he started writing in very unexpected, you know, directions where he would never have thought to take it. Pavel Bareš, I would argue, had the most intimate experience with our digital writer, because he opted for a real-time seance with a digital writer and made sure that one of the characters in his story was entirely generated by AI. The title of the story is also generated by AI. It's called The Last Revolver, the story of the Last Revolver, so that has a nice zing to it. And the detective, the vision of the detective that appears in the story is entirely generated by AI. It's kind of a true crime, Nordic mystery type of a deal. We wanted kind of a lightweight, quirky feeling to it, and it worked quite well. Hanna Lehečková is a renowned author of children's content, and so she wrote a fairy tale called An Almost True Story from the Sewers, and she basically had the entire story generated and then rewrote it with her author's touch and made sure that it was appealing to a slightly younger audience that the artificial intelligence doesn't have that much of a connection with just yet. František Kotleta is an author of cyberpunk dramatic things, so he opted for collaboration in the way of generating prompts that he then worked on, picked one that he liked the most, and wrote the entire story around it. The story that he wrote was called A Sufficient Amount of Porn. It's a cyberpunk alternative future type of a noir story, and we opted for an older female actress, which was a very sort of stark juxtaposition to the text itself, and minimal sound design, and it created a very specific sort of hard-hitting atmosphere, so that was a great one. Bianca Belová wrote the beginning of a story and had artificial intelligence finish the story for her, which is the only explanation why her heroine, who had gone through some troubles in Catania, had to contend with the fact that she's, you know, just randomly grew a mustache in the last 5 minutes of the story. So that was obviously for her quite the ordeal, but she managed to get through it. And it's a mysterious horror with a twist ending. She picked, I think we generated about 25 endings for her, and she picked this one because she liked it the best. It has a younger female actress and has a very sort of standard issue short story feel to it. We also had one sort of mode of collaboration that none of the authors actually decided to go for, so I wrote a short story myself. We wanted to incorporate a whole narrative subplot within the story itself, so that's what I did with a short story, The Spiritist. It's an ambient horror. Now, there's one author that I didn't mention, Ondřej Neff. He wrote kind of a Twin Peaks-inspired piece called A Night in Hotel Chaos, which is the next excerpt that you're going to hear. And I would encourage you to kind of see if you prefer the first excerpt that you heard, or the first story that you heard, or the second one, which one sounds better. Let's hope it's the second one, so we'll see.
Hlavní chodba byla slabě osvětlená. Na podlaze leželo několik opotřebovaných koberců a tmavé, dubem obložené schodiště. Ne každá vedlejší chodba někam vedla. Prošel namátkou zvolenou potemnělou chodbou do svého pokoje. Dveře se se skřípěním otevřely. Uvnitř bylo zhasnuto. Stěny mezi pokoji byly tenké, všechno bylo slyšet. Avizovaná erotika tohoto místa pro něj byla něčím novým. Z otevřeného okna vanul chladný vánek. Bárta k němu přistoupil a odhrnul závěs. Podíval se přes zábradlí na temnou hladinu moře. Vyklonil se z okna a opřel se lokty o parapet. Moře bylo klidné a nevzrušené. V měsíčním světle se třpytilo. Pozoroval vlny, když se vedle něj objevila mladá žena.
Dobrý den, pane Bárto. Jmenuji se Konstanc. Dnes večer vám budu dělat noční recepční.
It pains me entirely too much that you're not going to know how that ends, but it's a good one. Now would probably be the time to get to the surprise that I have planned for you. Now, we've been working with GPT since 2020, as I've mentioned, and I would encourage you to do the very same thing. If you find a system or a program or an algorithm that works for you and the content that you want to create, I would strongly encourage you to work with it long term, because you can really kind of see the evolution of the program, and you'll be able to, in time, exploit everything that you needed to do in order to make your content the best that it can be. Now, we've worked with GPT-2 and GPT-3, and with the fairly recent update to GPT-4, it was very, very clear that we were going to have to celebrate this as well. And we figured what better way to do that than to use this presentation to introduce you to Digital Writer 3. The premiere at Czech Radio is going to be tomorrow, so you're going to be the first people in the world to hear this. I'm very giddy. I'm trying to contain myself. So, without further ado, this is Digital Writer 3, and a very sort of odd look at a gothic horror titled The Forgotten Portrait.
Ke své hrůze ale zjistil, že paní Eleonora nebyla obětí prokletí, ale strůjkyní svého vlastního zvráceného plánu. Namalovala svůj portrét, aby mohla z panství uniknout a najít jinou oběť, která by zaujala její místo. Vincentův soucit a touha jí pomoci byly klíčem ke svobodě. Uvězněn v obraze, Vincent mohl jen s hrůzou sledovat, jak duše paní Eleanor posedla jeho tělo a její zlovolný smích zněl chodbami panství. Nakonec to byla jeho fascinace portrétem a záhadnou ženou na něm vyobrazenou, která spečetila jeho osud. Občané Černolesa si často šeptali o podivném umělci, který zmizel v prokletém zámku. Portrét paní Eleanor zůstal skrytý a čekal, až někdo další padne za oběť jeho hrozivému kouzlu.
Ale nebylo to tak vždy.
Now, it's good to know that with this season, we decided to do 2 short stories. Again, we have this one, and we have sort of a legend again with a twist, because apparently AI loves twists. But also, it gave us a little bit of a chance to look at our own radio work. So apart from these 2 stories, we also have a couple of episodes of an entirely fictional true crime podcast where the crime isn't true, but it very well could be. And we also have 2 radio reports about some interesting goings-on in the city of Prague, read by one of our most famous news anchors. So that being said, that would be all from me. This has been The Digital Writer. If you have any questions at all, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the presentations or at the email and Twitter below. So thank you very much.
My name is Satu Keto, and I work as an innovation lead at Yle Technology and Development. And I was asked to talk about how AI will change audio business. And when I started to write my presentation, it was a week ago. Last Monday, it was the historic day, the same day when ChatGPT 4 was released. And released is the right word, I think. And when writing my presentation and playing with ChatGPT 4, I was starting to think that maybe this presentation will be the shortest and fastest in the history of Radiodays, because I can just introduce myself and click and say thank you, because ChatGPT-4 will give you its educated and maybe good answer. But of course I won't teach my 15 minutes here in Radiodays, so I will present or tell you about our path in Yle, the path towards this very, very interesting moment in the history of technology when ChatGPT-4 and all the other AI tools will do the massive, and interesting digital transformation. But I shall give you 10 examples very quickly in a kind of pedagogical way, what we have been trying and doing in 5 years. But first 2 or 3 nice pictures. In this picture, Elsa Eman crystallized very, very nicely what has been happening. In 20 years we have had this digital transformation, but 20 years forward it will be about transformation of digital. And we have to start doing things differently. I just yesterday read an article from, it was something like Euronews Next, and there was this article telling that about a study in USA where 80% of all workers will be affected in AI in next years. And it's also predicted that 50% faster will a lot of things being done. And we have to think what kind of content, in what kind of platforms, and what kind of narrations we will be doing. For all of us, for each of us is Yle's strategic slogan, and we must find ways to serve Finns with modern personal user experience. And how do we do that? We have to play with all these tools. We have to experiment new forms of service, new technologies, and new forms of narration. And there is these 10 examples. In 1980, we were very, very eager to experiment with text-to-speech technology, and we worked with Helsinki-based Futurize to try to learn to train a neural network using archive material, especially from late President Kekkonen's New York speeches from 1950s to 1980s. And although this project was complex and challenging compared to today's technology, we did succeed, because we did succeed to creating sentences that didn't exist in the 50s or 80s. We got the late president to use words like digital transformation and innovations and social media.
Kansalaiset, digitaaliset innovaatiot vievät Yleä eteenpäin. Terveisin Kekkonen.
This is a little bit embarrassing result to show, but you see how much the tech has changed in 5 years. And we got so excited that next we were preparing to make non-binary Yle people that are this kind of pilots. And after that, the next step was to make Yle persons as a digital versions.
Hallo allerseits und schön euch alle zu treffen. Ich bin Jarila.
Oops. Oh, they told me that I can use the laptop this way as well, but maybe it doesn't work. If I go back again.
Hallo allerseits und schön euch alle zu treffen. Ich bin Jarilati und bin heute hier, um ein wenig darüber zu sprechen, wie wir uns jetzt bei YLE auf Innovation konzentrieren.
He doesn't speak any German or Italian, was there also. But in 2019 we piloted with an audio drama that could be listened to and played with a smart speaker. We were very inspired in BBC's examples of non-linear narrative and built our own smart speaker drama for the Google Home speaker. And still the smart speakers don't speak or support Finnish, so we had to do that in English. And reach was also quite poor because the penetration that is very poor in smart speakers in Finland. But in any case, we were inspired of this kind of storytelling where the user chooses where to go next. And the project is still there if you want to have a sneak peek. And the next interesting experiment was the implementation of an audio drama script, more specifically dialogue using AI. And also this experiment left us thinking about how to go further with AI and script writing. And next, in 2020, we experimented with text-to-speech technology / audio synthesis, and we made our own text articles, audio clips that could be listened to our website. And the public liked this opportunity to, instead of reading, to listen. And the next we tried to run these audio news clips at night on the Swedish radio, and the feedback was also positive. 2020, we worked with Ukrainian company called Respecha to do some audio deepfake piloting. And we sort of stole this very famous Finnish radio host voice and did an audio deepfake pilot to describe the audiences how easy it is to steal a person's voice with current technology. You might have been heard that the newest hoax is that your child is calling you and saying, "Mom, please send money." And that is very easy to do if you have a 30 seconds of somebody's voice. But there is also, so to say, non-evil ways to utilize this audio synthesis too. And it was interesting to make a digital twin of another Finnish radio or audio host. And this time we wanted to test if a producer could use this digital twin as a marketing tool or in a marketing context or marketing content. And what we did was that we modeled both the host and the producer. And then when the producer spoke, the neural network transformed it to the host's voice. And what we wanted to try is that if this host could concentrate doing good content and the marketing content would be done by a synthetic version of his. And we also tested this in social media platforms, and the synthetic character passed the test as a real person.
Me päätettiin kokeilla, miltä näyttäisi, jos musta tekisi deepfake-videon.
Moi, mun nimeni on Juuso Pekkinen. Mä olen Yle Tieteen podcast-toimittaja ja tällä hetkellä teen uutta, vielä salaista podcastia, joka tullaan julkaisemaan tänä keväänä.
Ja kysymys kuuluu, menisikö läpi, jos et sä tietäisi, että toi on feikki?
And now back to non-linear storytelling. Last year, we piloted an audio drama that could be listened and played on a mobile device, and this Swedish Yles production, Sexy Bands, actually won pre-Europa the first prize in audio production last year. And this also showed us that the interfaces where the listener can decide whether to continue to the right or to the left is kind of interesting thing to do. And after these two drama piloting, we have done last week something with documentary content. And this is a story that asks, could you stay alive in Belarus if you were a journalist in there? And it's now in Finnish and Swedish, but there will be an English version as well. And I think that the next try could be to use this platform as with the news content. And it would be nice to try to write these non-linear scripts with the AI also. And the last one. This is maybe the most recent and most funny experiment that we did last spring with the AI judge in Sibelius violin competition. Yeah, we wanted to find out if a neural network can be trained to judge or criticize classical music. And the result was that the AI judge chose another person than the bio-human judge did. And one other thing in artificial intelligence area that we are very interested in is Web3 in a whole, and the possibilities of utilize NFTs in non-commercial content and use. And the second experiment that we did on Sibelius violin competition was that we had this NFT trophy that was given to the winner of the Sibelius violin competition. And I think that there are a lot of juicy possibilities to use NFTs as a public service organization too. You have seen these names and slides, and so I don't have to mention about this, but my message is that AI and audio is there, and we can't rubber it back. It is there. And about my takeaways, I just Googled 5 minutes and I found all these audio AI tools and what to do with them. I'd say that we have to play with them and think that they are tools and they are toys. And we have to think that maybe they could serve as an intelligence help to help us biojournalists to concentrate on in-depth journalistic thinking and in-depth artistic thinking. And there is some very interesting and important words like transparency, ethics, moral, legal issues, and trust. How do we ensure that people who are using our content trust, that the trust remains strong towards public service content? And how can we make the authentication? Is it with some kind of watermarks, or could blockchain technologies help with that? And if there's anybody in this room who would like to play with us at Yle Innovations we are very eager to co-ponder, co-create, and cooperate. So let's keep in touch. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Anna and Satu. Mind-blowing. And as you saw, in 5 years, it has been a huge leap. We have exactly 5 minutes, so now we have a possibility to ask questions. I have a microphone here, and if we have questions, could you go there and answer, because we're out of mics now. Is there any hands there? Okay. Could you please introduce yourself and ask your question?
I'm Henk Oosterhoff from the Dutch public broadcaster. Anna, are writers willing to work also considering that possibly if half the story is written by AI and they write half the story, what about copyright? Do they think that's a danger for them?
Thanks.
That's a great question, and one that I thought I might get. When it comes to this sort of thing, the artists or the writers in this particular case were given the English original that was generated, and they translated it and transformed it nonetheless. So we like to think that it was the author's work in general. We use the co-authorship between the artificial intelligence and the artists themselves as, I don't want to say gimmick because it's not a gimmick, but as more of a more precise description of the creative process that stood behind the story. But in general, the copyright of the piece was that of the author that created it, the human author that created it. I hope that answers it for you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for a great question and answer. Any more questions here?
Yeah, a question for you, Anna. You were talking about a lot of negative feedback as well. I'm interested, so what kind of feedback was that?
There was feedback of those that don't view artificial intelligence or the work with artificial intelligence as something public service media should do. We strongly disagree with that because we feel that it's also our responsibility to really be in the forefront of innovation when it comes to this sort of thing. There was feedback that the stories were shit, which, hey-oh, I mean, sure. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. It's an artistic expression. That was especially pertaining to the first series. And some of the stories did have issues that would make them not easy necessarily to listen to or easy to consume, but that was also part of the beauty of what we were trying to do. We were trying to showcase the ability of the artificial intelligence. And if it's not there, that's fair game. We can also point that out. So a lot of the criticism we've tried to address in the second and, of course, in the third series as well. Some people were more interested in the background more than the stories themselves. They were more interested in the work. So that's why in the second series we included 6 interviews with 6 authors that really kind of went into how they were doing the creative processes and whatnot. So yeah, there was a wide variety, but as I've mentioned, we did go into this thinking there might be some of that as well. And hey, you know, we're here for it, and we try to learn from it as much as we can. We try to deliver and make the stories a little bit more customary for our audience. So it was a mix of that.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the great questions. We're getting out of time, so you can approach these great professionals later on, and they are more than happy to share their slides with you if you want some more takeaways. So thank you so much, and on track 3 we'll continue with hyper interesting and important session about radio and third-party platforms. Thank you, Anna and Satu, and thank you all for coming. Have a great Radio Days. You did just great.